I'm also going to be recording this session as well, which I've just actually clicked record now. And if anybody wishes me to distribute that recording to them, I can also do that for you. So of course you have a copy. I tend not to share the slides, but of course I do share the recording. So if that is something that you particularly wish to have, then I can most definitely make sure that you have that. The timing, like I've just mentioned there, it's going to last around about 90 minutes, but I'm going to be popping you into breakouts, etc. So we've got a bit of an opportunity to kind of play around a little bit with that time. But like I've said, I mean, God bless you, you know, Karen, who has joined, of course, from Sydney. And I hope you don't get too tired and you'll be able to hang around for the vast majority of it as well. So this is me. My name's Sam, Sam Sloan. I know I sound like a private investigator, as people very often tell me. A retail manager for many, many years. But also a corporate facilitator, which is probably where I learned my trade to be not only a face-to-face facilitator, but also online, which I've been doing for around about 10 years now. So these little mini sessions that I create, I just love creating them. I just kind of bring them all together and I just like sharing them with people. But one of my biggest passions is coaching. And since I met Doug about 2.5 years ago, I just really enjoy how it correlates into the mental toughness piece. And of course, you guys, if you haven't already completed the MTQ Plus measure, you have the opportunity to do that as well. And what a fantastic time to be able to do that when we may well be under quite a lot of stress and pressure at the moment. It can give us a great insight into how we're dealing with that stress and pressure at the moment. And of course, then how we can support that going forward, shall we say. Like I said, I live in Manchester and I am massive into aviation. I'm also training to be a pilot. My partner's a pilot because we go flying. This isn't my plane, but I just thought it was quite cute. The introductions, we've just kind of said hi to each other, which is fantastic. And I know where everybody is kind of located now, which is superb. So as we kind of go through, I want to learn a little bit more about you guys. And obviously I'll give you the opportunities to speak as we move through the sessions as well. Again, what a great time to bring everybody together, especially with this environment that's happening at the moment with COVID-19. And I hope everybody at the moment within your world is keeping safe and well as well. So communication, really important when we're in this particular environment. You've joined, everybody's audio is connected, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, what you can also do, we are in share mode. If you wiggle your mouse, you'll very probably have a line of cameras down if you're only working on one screen, on one side. But what you also can do is wiggle your mouse and you can open up the participants and the chat panels. And this is how we're going to start to communicate, for instance. So this is really important that we do this, certainly all the way through. I want to make sure that you guys are getting the most out of the sessions. So if you can, for me, if you can now just give me out of your participant panel, which will have the list of our names on, a little green tick just to say that you have found the ticks and the crosses. That would be absolutely fantastic.
Participant panel.
Participant panel, it should be.
Oh yes, participants, there's 10 of us.
That's
yes.
the one, there's 10 of you, there most certainly is.
Ah yeah, so I click on.
Yep.
What do I click on? Me?
So you can click on, so just underneath the list of your names, you'll see little ticks and crosses, and just click on the tick.
Oh, I don't have a tick. Oh, yeah, I see it. It is.
It's all right. Perfect, look at that. So there's lots of different little emoticons there. Please feel free as we move through the session.
I've discovered where they are. I was in a webinar last week and I was looking for those and I couldn't find them.
Well, there you go, you see. So right, I'll clear them as you pop them on. So don't worry about having to clear them down. I can do that for you. So I'll save you a job. The other thing that's on your little bar at the bottom is reactions. So you'll have a little like smiley face. So within our cameras here, and I'll pop it onto, I haven't got ZZ's camera on actually. But you can also pop reactions on, things like a thumbs up and a high five, and that appears on your cameras as well. There you go. Karen is beautifully demonstrating that as well. Feel free, and a thumbs up there. Or you can, of course, because we've got cameras on, just feel free to use a thumbs up anyway. It's really important that we know how to use the tools. So that is the emoticons, if you like, or what I call the emoticons, which is fantastic. When we're in share mode like we are now, some of the tools disappear to the very, very top of your screen. So you'll have an option that says more options or view options, and that will drop down. So if you haven't got the toolbar at the bottom, you can also get things like chat and annotation tools from there as well, because we're going to be using those throughout the workshop as well. So this is almost like a Zoom kind of upskilling too. So chat, everybody should have the chat panel open, which would be fantastic if everybody could just pop into chat now, send to everyone just to say hi, and then I know you can use that functionality too. Because we won't just keep the mics open. You can if you want. You can speak freely. Of course you can. You've got control of your own mics. So Donna's saying hello. Helen's saying hello. Or hi all. Karen's saying hello. Glenn. Amy. Oh, I've got Amy coming. I've just spotted somebody else who's come in as well. And that, unless that's, yeah, I need to go to Amy in just a second. We've also got John saying that and Penny as well. So Amy, let me just come to you. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Hi, you okay?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Fantastic. You snuck in there, didn't you? I didn't see you pop in. Where are you calling from, Amy?
I live down near Brighton and it's pouring down rain here as well. So
right, it's gorgeous as well in Brighton. Beautiful. Yeah. Got a lovely beach down there. Amy, welcome to the session. Sorry I missed you when you came in then, because I clicked come in and then I just said, hey, we've got you there. Lovely to have you, Amy.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so everybody's popped in a chat message there, which is perfect, which is exactly what I would like you to do. So on this slide here now, we can use this as a whiteboard, and we're going to test this again in just a second, because I want you to kind of have a little bit of a play. Right to the top of your screen again, where you've got your view options. And if you see me leaning forwards, I'm just doing this into my second screen. Fourth option down is annotate. And what that will give you is a little toolbar like what appears on the slide here. You can then do various different annotation things. So you can write, that's me there drawing on there. You can type. So you could type your name, for instance, using the text tool, the little T. And you've got little stamps that you can use as well. So please feel free to just have a little bit of a play with those annotation tools. The reason you're going to need these is because we're going to do some whiteboard activities in a moment, and you're going to be able to type. So using the text tool, for instance, you're going to be able to do in just a second. If you can't do them, don't worry. We'll just divert into chat, so don't worry too much. But again, it just gives you guys something else to kind of have a little bit of a play with when we are in the session as well. Okay, is everybody okay with those annotation tools? If you are, just give me a green tick, which would be fantastic.
Where was ticks?
Ticks were in the participants. Told you I was
going to be busy. Yeah. Participants, Bob.
See, I'm quite privileged. I've got 3 screens, which really...
Oh, wow.
I know. So I've got the main slides in Zoom here, I've got the cameras here, and I've got all the other things over on the other screen. So it kind of just really helps. But yeah, that's perfect. So John, are you all right there? You can give us a nod, John, if you're all right with those annotation tools. Perfect. That's lovely. Okay, and I'll clear those down, like I've said. Okay, what you need to do with Zoom is you've got to clear all the drawings before you move the slide on. So if you're ever delivering anything on Zoom, that's a nice little trick to make sure, because as you advance the slide, all the drawings stay with you, which is a little bit frustrating. So I thought we'd have a bit of fun using those annotation tools. Let's do a spot the difference, which has got nothing to do with the session at all, but I just thought it was a bit of fun. So you can use those annotation tools that you've just had. Use your pen if you like, and you can circle the spot the differences. Absolutely. Oh, and I've just thought actually what I could have done, and I haven't done it, so it's going to change, but I've just thought of something, and you'll see what I've thought of in just a moment. Perfect. I think we've found them all. Bonjour. Absolutely. Just a little bit of fun, just to be kind of going on with. Now, what I've done, as I move the slide on, I should have kept them in the same place, and I should have put the answers just a bit over to the right, and I didn't because of, as you can see, all the annotations. So I'll do that next time. There you go. I'll remember that for next time. So thank you for that again. Just a little bit, like I've said, of a giggle there for us. We've got a global spread, which is quite normal for these sessions. And I've got to be honest, it never, ever ceases to amaze me at the wonderful global spread of people that we actually get onto these as well. So thank you very much for joining, irrelevant of where you are today in the world and the time. I really appreciate it. This is what we're going to focus on specifically. I'm not going to read through each of that agenda, but we are going to have a look at the strengths and weaknesses and the challenges of the mentally sensitive. And I think right now that that's really the most pertinent thing. We're going to have a quick look at the 4 C's, and then of course how we can complement each other. I've got some polls. I've even got some live word clouds that I'm going to encourage you to complete in a little while. So you will need your mobile phones with you, which isn't normally said on an online session, in fairness, but yes, you will need your mobile phone as well. Just a little bit of ground rules if you can. Minimize those distractions, shut down sort of any applications, etc. And if you can, try and focus on the session as well. And just let me know if you need to step away from the session, so I'm not just coming to you and sort of pointing a question, because I will be getting some mics open so everybody, like I've said, can get involved. So let's get into the main content then. The strengths of a mentally tough individual. So what I'm kind of interested in then, first of all, is what is mental toughness before we do anything else. Now, I've got a quote here from, and I know quite a few of you guys have mentioned Doug, which Strycek, I can never pronounce his surname, he'll probably kill me for saying it like that, and Peter Clough, of course, who is the academic that sits behind all of the research, shall we say, well, not all of the research, some of the research that sits behind the mental toughness questionnaires, etc., which is just fascinating. And the definition, shall we say, is the personality trait, like it says there, which determines in some part how individuals respond when exposed to stresses, pressure. Of course, though, we've got the opportunity and challenge, irrespective of the prevailing situation. Goodness me, have we got a prevailing situation at the moment? So that's the definition of what Peter and Doug would describe it as. And I think when we really start to kind of consider the situation that we're in now, it gets even more interesting. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to put you into 2 teams now, and I'm going to pop you into a breakout room separately so you can have a conversation with the individuals in there. So when I bring you back out, you'll then be able to basically have a spokesperson just to kind of debrief what it was that you spoke about within your breakout room. So I want to know, what are the strengths, would you say, of a mentally tough individual? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set those breakout rooms up. I'm going to have 2 breakout rooms, like I said, and I will now, because you're going to be doing exactly the same task. Nothing's going to be any different for you at all. And that question, I will also, I'm just grabbing the question there, I will also just pop into chat so you can remember, and I'll also send that through to you in the breakout rooms. So in breakout room number 1, we've got Amy, Glenn, Karen and Penny. ZZ Sam, just ignore her, she's just my second screen that I have as an attendee view. And we've got Bob in the breakout room number 2, Donna, Helen and John. What do you think are the strengths of a mentally tough individual? What would you say that they are, just from your perspective? I'm just going to give you about 3 or 4 minutes in that breakout room just to have a separate conversation in 2 groups. And let's see if there's any similarities or differences when you come back. Does anybody have any questions about what it is that I've asked you to do? If so, raise your hand, open up your mic. If not, just give me a red cross and then I will open the breakout rooms. So you'll need your participants again, Bob.
I found it. I'm getting efficient.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. Perfect. So Penny, are you okay there? And John as well? John, you can just, yeah, perfect. Absolutely. John, you can just nod your head if all is cool. Lovely. Okie dokies. Fantastic. So I'm going to start those breakout rooms, literally just a couple of minutes in there, have a conversation, designate a spokesperson that can debrief the conversation when you come back in a few moments. Speak to you in a moment. You will need to select the little prompt to take you through. Fabulous. Okay. So everybody should be back now in the main room. I think we may have lost somebody from breakout room number 2. I'm not sure if somebody popped off. So I know there's been a few issues with connectivity over the last 24 hours, to be honest, but hopefully they'll be able to get back in.
Yeah, I think it's John. He's just changing computer. He'll be back with us in a minute.
Ah, right, okay.
Which room?
It's Bob.
I was going to say, yeah,
changing his-
John's.
Oh, Bob, sorry, John.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
No problem. That's absolutely fine. Perfect. Okay, so let's do breakout room number 1 then. So we had Amy, Glenn, Karen, and Penny in breakout room number 1. Who wants to kind of debrief your conversation in there that you had just a few moments ago?
I was the lucky one who drew the short straw, so that would be me.
Go for it.
So I think whenever we started to think about a mentally tough individual, it was really about, a lot of words came up. One of which was sort of resilience, agility, able to kind of move with the time. Someone who was really confident, someone who was, a strong person in their own beliefs. And really willing to, adapt to their environment and move on with some of the changes that were, happening throughout. So for us, I suppose it's the whole idea of, almost standing up and being a leader, and just adapting to your environment as it goes through, and kind of leading the way and showing that really sort of true grit. Anybody in my group have anything else to add to that? That's us.
No problem. Do you know, some of the words that you've used there, I think really sum that up really well, about that resilience and that agility and that true grit at the moment. Sometimes to even just keep yourself motivated, people are really having to draw on that right now. And I completely agree. You've got some great words up there. So thank you very much for that, Amy. Brilliant stuff. What have we got from breakout room number 2? Because we've got Donna, Helen and John left in the room at the moment, because I think Bob, like we said, has disappeared for a second. Who would like to debrief that?
Okay. Well, I got the straw to speak on behalf of the group. Bob's changing his computer at the moment. But we discussed about remaining focused. Bob told us he's a master trainer. He trained with Doug some years ago. So I guess he's got a good angle on mental toughness. I deliver it in Wales. I trained with AQR about 12 years ago.
Okay.
So what we talked about was about the fact that you can remain focused even in the face of stresses and pressure and that type of thing, which is pertinent today, I guess. It's staying focused, being committed to see things through, and having that motivation to make sure that commitment, that you stay focused again on getting whatever part of the job you can get done.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think even more so now with everything going on, and that commitment piece as well, because all of a sudden everybody's world's turned upside down. So everything's changed. Well, not for everybody, in fairness, but for some people, it really has turned completely on its head. And it is staying focused. And a mentally tough individual will do that more naturally than somebody that's more mentally sensitive. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about. I can see Bob is coming back in to the room. She's fab. Fingers crossed he will be okay and connect his audio. And I'll go to him in just a second. Where's he gone? Okay, let me just make sure his mic is okay. Hi, Bob.
I'm back.
Yay! Perfect.
Change computers.
Excellent. Just like that. Yeah, lovely. We were just debriefing the 2 breakout rooms, and John has done a sterling job there on explaining exactly what it was that you guys were discussing within your breakout room as well. So thank you very much for that, and it's nice to have you back with us, Bob. Can
you see me?
I can't. I've got a blank. Your camera's on. Yay!
I had the cache over my my camera.
Not a bad thing to do, to be honest.
So the Americans can't spy on me.
I was in a session actually last week, and that lady's locking her sessions, which I can do with this one in fairness, because apparently some people have been joining, even though they've registered for the event, and then showing unsavoury things on their
right.
cameras. It's like, it's not very
Wow.
nice, is it really? But anyway, I think we're all right so far today.
Okay.
Absolutely. But yes, thanks, Bob. Yeah, it's funny actually. We were watching, as you do when you're into aviation, air crash investigation, and the other night, and there was a crash many years ago. It was an Air France crash, and the two pilots that were in charge of the aircraft at the time, the first officer didn't deal with the stress and the pressure of that situation very well, and fear took over, and he was pulling back on the aircraft to try and make it right, to make it go up, to bring the nose up. And what he was actually doing was he was creating the aircraft to stall. By the time they realized he was doing that, it was too late, and unfortunately the plane crashed. But it fascinates me that in such a high pressure role as being a pilot, just how pertinent this is. And I know that Doug has been working with a few of the airlines as well, and I just think every opportunity, every business area, whether it be highly pressured or highly stressed, has the opportunity to develop the people to help them in situations that are quite pressurized. And of course, like we've said, we've got this exactly going on at the moment. So yeah, you came out with some fantastic stuff there from your breakout room, so thank you very much for that. Strengths of the mental toughness individual, somebody that has a high mental toughness score, and we will talk you through the 4 C's in just a few moments. They have belief in themselves. They believe that they can do it. Sometimes they may be asked to do something, they don't know how to do it, they'll go off and find how to do it. They've got belief in their own abilities. They tend to keep their emotions in check. So even at a time like this, whereas some people are finding it very difficult to cope emotionally, actually they're quite self-aware of what's going on for them. I'm not going to read through every single one of these, but they make promises and keep them because they've set that down and they want to make sure that they achieve that. They're driven to succeed. They stay motivated. They can be, like you've just been saying, far more focused. They understand that actually setbacks are opportunities to learn as well. What is it that we can learn, never mind as an individual, but as a city, as a country, as a world? What is it that we can learn from this? I'd love Doug to be able to do this with some of the governments. I really would.
Well,
I know. They also believe in their ability and that they can influence others. So a mentally tough individual now, this is what was in my mind last week when I wrote this, all of a sudden should be kind of looking around on how they can influence positively the people around them. And when we look at the measures in just a few moments, this is where we'll start to kind of see this play out. But mental toughness can also have a downside. So this is what I would like to share with you now. I'd like to share this poll, and I'm going to open this poll. So what are the weaknesses of the mentally tough? Now that should have appeared on the center of your screen.
Yeah.
They believe they can do everything, and you can select more than one answer here. They take too many risks, they overcommit, or believe they cannot achieve anything at all. What would you say would be happening here? You can select as many as you like. Okay, I can see those changing. Just going to give you just a few more seconds. I think everybody's completed that. Brilliant. Okay, so I can share those results. Now, interestingly, one individual has gone for they believe they cannot achieve anything. I'll come back to that in a second. But like we've just been talking about just a moment ago, they have self-belief. They'll have a go at something, even if maybe they've never done it before. However, that can have a downside. Maybe they don't have the skills, for instance, and this is where they start to maybe take too many risks. So when we start to think about what's happening at the moment within society, if an individual is taking too many risks, what are they likely to be doing with the lockdown rules at the moment?
Relaxing.
Yeah, they could be relaxing them. They could be the ones that are actually going out thinking, I'll be all right, I'm fit and well, it's okay, it doesn't really apply to me, it's going to happen to somebody else. So that risk orientation for somebody that's mentally tough, that could be a potential blind spot for them. They can also overcommit. So what happens there to a mentally tough individual that actually overcommits?
They fall over.
Yeah, they take too much on, don't they? They can get burnout. Absolutely. And they may not recognize, because they're so focused on what it is that they're trying to achieve, that actually all of a sudden, before they know it, they can be really quite poorly. Now, interestingly, the very bottom one, they believe they cannot achieve anything. How do you think that this would be a weakness in a mentally tough individual then? Anyone can open up the mics or pop it into chat or do whatever you want. I'm just interested to see what your thought process. Go on.
I was going to say, I think I may have been the one that voted for that, so I think I'm the one individual. And I suppose I was actually thinking is that they believe, well, so they believe that they can't achieve anything, but it's sort of almost like spreading themselves too thin. So they just take on, and maybe it kind of links to that, taking on too many things and then realizing actually that they can't do it all. And so then they just kind of give up. That was kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So within their reports, that could highlight, and we'll have a look at this in a little while, that could highlight in several areas, and we'll come back to that in a little while, but that's a lovely point. So thank you for that, Amy. Okay, let me take that poll away just for a second. So that will have disappeared off your screen now. And let's just kind of consolidate this, like we were saying just a moment ago. They believe they can do everything, but don't understand sometimes why others can't do it. Well, I can do it, so why can't they? So they can get frustrated, and that can be happening at this point in time as well. I've had so many leaders come to me. I'm okay working from home. I don't see what the problem is. Other people are going into meltdown. They're safe at home. What's the problem with them? Why can't they be more organised? And this can be a real downside of maybe quite a mentally tough individual as a leader that may have some mentally sensitive individuals within their teams. They can be quite unflappable as well. So again, that risk orientation starts to come into play here because they're not really fazed by anything. My youngest son is a little bit like this. There's nothing, it's almost like water off a duck's back sometimes. Actually, that can be quite detrimental to him. They can overcommit, and like we said there, they can take on too much and not recognise those burnout signs, etc., and the warning signs of maybe that is happening. Can take too many risks, but they can also kind of brown out a little bit if they get bored. And what happens when we end up getting bored? We end up maybe taking another risk just to kind of liven things up a little bit. So that can be a real downside as well. And sometimes the confidence can be overpowering, and again, they can overcommit to various other points. Does anybody else have anything further to add in relation to the mentally tough individual or the downsides that can actually bring?
Yeah, I might just make the comment that it relates to that unflappable. If people are lacking in demonstrating the emotions that they're experiencing, they're so controlled in the emotions, it can really get in the way of them forming relationships because people can't read you very well. Yep. So the ability to trust and lean into that person is diminished. And so with a mentally tough person who's so controlled in their emotional display, it can put quite a big boundary or barrier between themselves and others in forming relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lovely point. So thank you for sharing that. But yeah, brilliant. It certainly can. And that, again, they may not necessarily recognise that could be a bit of a blind spot for them. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I think often a lot of the downsides are kind of the dark side of the positive side. And when determination becomes stubbornness, when focus becomes being blinkered, being disciplined becomes being dogmatic, etc.
Yeah. It certainly does. And we're going to talk about self-awareness in a little while, because I think sometimes if you are more inclined to be mentally tough, even though, yes, you are quite highly self-aware sometimes, we're back down to those almost dogmatic, and I don't want to kind of almost admit that that's happening or that that's part of maybe the situation, or maybe not even, I call it the ugly mirror, holding up the mirror kind of to you to sort of say, actually, what part have I played in this? And they may not want to recognize that. So yeah, another interesting point. So thank you for sharing.
I think when you're mentally tough, it can be quite intimidating to colleagues on occasions.
Yeah, they can be quite overbearing, because again, we're back down to them being so focused. Has you ever come across somebody like this, Glenn? Have you worked with an individual that can be quite intimidating in that sense?
Well, I could say I could look in the mirror.
So you'd recognise yourself within that statement.
Aspects of myself, yeah.
I think we can all be a little bit like that. And I mean, again, it depends, I think, sometimes on the situation. It can depend on sometimes even an individual, for instance. So yeah, again, that self-awareness is absolutely paramount. We'll talk about that in a little while, but brilliant. Thank you for sharing. So let's move into the more mentally sensitive then. And this is where we're going to need those whiteboard skills in just a second. So I've kind of split this down into two sort of areas. What are the strengths, but also the challenges, do you think, of somebody that's quite mentally sensitive? Because this, of course, is the opposite. It's not mentally weak, it's mentally sensitive. So you're going to have to go up to the top of your screen, or you can pop it into chat, whichever one you find easily. Up to the top of your screen, open your annotation tools, and that will open up a little text. It'll say T, and then you can bring down onto the slide, and of course you can then type onto the slide what it is that you want to say in regards to what you feel are the strengths and of course the challenges. And I can see who's typed as well, which is quite handy. I don't know if oh yeah, you can see it. I didn't know if it came up actually for the participant, and it does, so there you go. Oops, didn't mean to click that. One sec. Let me click back. I always forget if you click the slide, it clicks it forward. So yeah, so we've got, if we do the strengths first of all, we've got Bob saying empathy. I'll come to you a couple of these as well. Emotional intelligence. This is going to obviously link to some degree to that self-awareness. So yeah, I completely agree. I can move stuff as well, so don't worry if you're kind of overtyping people. I can always move things around a little bit, so don't worry too much about that. Penny's also said there that empathetic, heart on sleeve, yeah. I think that's a massive strength. Can be supportive to others, great team player. We've got Karen saying creative, yeah. We've got Bob saying listening. Bob also saying accommodating. And then if we come to the challenges, we've got Bob saying, oh no, Karen saying lacking confidence. Amy saying caring too much what people think. Can be seen acquiescing, I can never say that word, but yes, Bob, absolutely. Crumble under pressure, Penny saying, which I think at the moment we're beginning to see some people, and this is happening too. Imposter syndrome, that's an interesting one, Karen. We'll come back to a couple of these. Karen's also said waits to be told what to do. Yeah, back down too easily and doesn't voice opinion, definitely. So let's come to a couple of the strengths first of all. So I think it was Amy that popped in emotional intelligence. Why would this be a strength, Amy, for the mentally sensitive?
Well, for me, it's kind of about understanding where other people are coming from, being able to, as Bob says, sort of empathize with them and perhaps bring to light, you know, the emotions that make part of you know, a conversation or a decision or whatever else, and being able to share that with others so that they can actually understand where that person is coming from, so that, you know, other people can sort of stop and take stock and go, oh, I actually hadn't thought of it in that way, and that for me is sort of something that I think would be a massive strength in someone who's mentally sensitive.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that's I think it's a lovely trait to have that as well. And it kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with what Penny, and feel free to open up your mic there, Penny, about that empathetic side, that heart on your sleeve, and can of course be supportive to others at the moment. I'm sure you have people within your either friends or family group or colleague groups, etc., that you're kind of thinking, actually, yeah, that's such and such. It's certainly one of my friends, Julie. I would most definitely describe her in this way. Penny, do you have anything further to add?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute my mic there.
Right.
I just think that the New Zealand Prime Minister, she came up with some quote recently about she'd always been told off for being empathetic because it was seen as a weakness, and actually she's probably one of the best leaders in the world. So
yep.
I think it's easy to see a caring, soft side of people as not a strength, and sometimes it's a massive strength.
Yeah. I completely agree. I can see a couple of bits in chat as well. I think Helen's just had to leave, actually. But, I mean, funnily enough, me and Ronnie were talking about this morning, about the... is it... I always forget a name. I can't remember a name.
No, not can I.
Cassandra,
We know who we mean. What's her name, sorry?
Is it Cassandra or something?
Is it?
Jacinda or something like that.
Jacinda Ardern.
That's
Jacinda Ardern.
We were talking about her this morning because she's pretty much levelled off this COVID thing because of the way that she's handled it. And she's an absolute inspiration. She really is. I mean, there was the shooting within the last couple of years that happened within that country. The way that the dignity that woman handled that situation and the empathy that she showed with others. Wow. I mean, gracious me. What a massive strength. Completely agree with you. Brilliant. Thank you.
At the same time, she's determined, she's focused.
Yep. So she's got a lovely balance, hasn't she? Absolutely. So again, I would imagine, and I mean, I don't know the lady, I would imagine she's pretty self-aware about how it is that she comes across as well. But I just think the way she conducts herself is very impressive, especially in the times like this that are highly pressurised. I can't even begin to imagine what governments are going through at the moment. And how to deal with it. How do you prioritise, etc. And yet she seems to do it with fantastic kind of no effort almost. So yeah, absolute hats off to her. So yeah, brilliant. I love those. So let's just come over to the mentally, the challenges more then. We had two concerned with harmony as well, kind of added just a moment ago. And Helen, by the look of it, unfortunately, she's had to disappear. She said that strength could be a wider range of emotions being used and more honesty. Unfortunately, she's had to disappear, which is such a pity. So anything here that's kind of sticking out for you that anybody's popped on that you think, actually, yeah, this is a real challenge for somebody that's mentally sensitive, whether it be now or when they're under significant pressure?
I think the comment about caring too much about what people think really can get in the way of them being able to respond, to speak up. I mean, it covers a lot of the additional comments that are put there. So the lack of self-confidence, almost that moment of freezing because they're too scared to move or too worried about the possible outcomes, or they ruminate and sit there and worry about it. So the stress and anxiety that's created as a result can be considerable.
Absolutely. They tend to overthink as well. So something that in reality, if they actually sat down and thought about it and allowed their kind of rational mind to come into play, actually... go on, sorry.
I would say they tend maybe to overfeel things, maybe rather than overthink things.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely, yeah.
I think it's more feelings, a feelings issue, maybe more than a thinking issue.
Yeah, definitely. I just think they get things out of perspective a little bit sometimes and kind of allow them to kind of grow rather than maybe sitting and thinking, actually, I do have some influence over this situation. But yeah, a lovely point. Okay.
One of the strengths of mentally sensitive, and I think I've seen some research along these lines, is that they are considered to be quite creative and innovative. And they need to be encouraged within the team because of that.
Yeah, most definitely. So it's tapping in to, even though it could be seen a little bit like we were saying just a moment ago, that actually it could be seen as a weakness when it actually isn't. It's a fantastic strength, and we just don't really tap into that as much as maybe we could or maybe should. do. But yeah, brilliant stuff. Got some great stuff up on there, so thank you very much for that. And I will just move that slide forwards now as well. So just to kind of consolidate some of the strengths, exactly like we were saying here, very, very good at sensing the mood of individuals, etc. They've almost kind of got a bit of a sixth sense, I almost kind of like to think of these individuals with this. They are sensitive to overload though. So yes, the mentally tough person may well take too much on, but these guys can potentially not want to say, a little bit like we were saying a moment ago, not want to speak up and not maybe want to say no. So they overload themselves and maybe not necessarily recognise that they're doing it. Exactly like Glenn's just been saying there, they can be incredibly creative as well. Tap into that. And of course, they can bring that more caring approach to maybe a situation, exactly like we were just saying there as well about the New Zealand Prime Minister too. Some of the challenges, and this is what can potentially create that anxiety that we've just been talking about. Sometimes they just don't feel in control and they can overfeel things. They feel the pressure sometimes when working to goals. I do a lot of sales training, and sometimes quite big groups, maybe 25 that I would be training in sales B2B. And the more mentally sensitive in the room, even though they're in sales and they understand what it's like, they really feel it when they're trying to work towards those specific goals, for instance.
The description you give, that sounds to me like a description of people who have low mental toughness. Does low mental toughness mean, how can I say it, high mental sensitivity?
Yes, so we're going to look at the 4 C's in just a moment. So I would have expected really somebody that was quite mentally sensitive to score maybe 1, 2, 3 or 4, and we'll have a look at the STEM reports in just a few moments. So I would be expected to see somebody more mentally sensitive to score in those types of realms.
Okay.
Definitely. Certainly on the reports that it comes back. They like routine, for instance. And they can often lack confidence, certainly within their own abilities as well. And again, this highlights and is shown within the reports. If you're familiar with the reports, I'm going to talk them through in just a few moments anyway, just to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up. So they're just some of the challenges, etc., that can be faced by somebody that is a little bit more on the mentally sensitive side, shall we say. So mental toughness summarised then. The opposite to mental toughness is mental sensitivity and not mentally weak or mental weakness, shall we say. Mentally tough people in general achieve more than mentally sensitive people, and the research suggests actually a mentally tough individual within a workplace can achieve 25% more productivity than a mentally sensitive individual. So there are some real benefits of actually developing your own mental toughness. Mentally sensitive people can achieve and lead effective lives. Nobody's saying that they can't, not at all. It's just recognising actually what are their strengths and how can they play to them. And also, what's incredibly important within all of this is that self-awareness, that reflection. How well are things working for you? What is it that maybe you need to do different to help improve that situation or whatever it is that you're kind of trying to achieve? And of course, that purposeful practice as well. So that's just kind of to summarise, shall we say. So if we start to move into now self-awareness, does anybody have any questions or anything further to add in regards to anything that we have just been discussing?
No, for the moment I'm okay.
Okay. Glenn, anything from you? Seeing as you are the master. Thank you, Karen, for the Red Cross. All good? No problem. Okay, so self-awareness. This is kind of one of them words, isn't it? That's kind of bandied around a little bit. And it just kind of fascinates me a little bit. Because how is it that we describe it? And I'm going to bring in another poll here. So what is it? What is self-awareness? Is it ignoring people? Maybe damaging behaviours? Is it disregard? And I might have spelt disregard, sorry, of others' feelings. Monitor their own emotions. And a guide. I may have actually only, so can you select one? I was going to say you should have been able to select more than one. And a guide for their own thinking and actions as well. What's your thoughts on this? Just give you another moment or two just to finish off that poll, and just press submit once you have selected your answers. Wonderful. I will just think everybody is done. I'll just end that polling and then I'll share those results. Yeah, absolutely. Monitoring their own emotions, they would recognize, actually, it's okay to be angry, but it's how that's displayed, it's how you come across, how that's impacting other people. They would recognize, let's just say that as an example. And a guide for their own thinking and actions, because the MTQ measures are very much linked into metacognition, which means you're thinking about what you're thinking about. Why is it I'm thinking that? Why am I behaving in that way? And that for me is what makes it even more powerful, because we can almost self-coach ourselves if we recognize things within ourselves. So let me just stop sharing those results just for a second, and that should have disappeared off your screen. And let me kind of just move into this, because we've just completed that poll there. Self-awareness, this is actually the definition of what self-awareness is. The ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions, to discriminate amongst them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and actions. So how do we then monitor the feelings of others? What is it that we do as human beings that enables us to do that? Because that's one thing that fascinates me. You know,
Question, feedback, ask them how they're feeling.
Yeah, ask them how they're feeling. You could ask for feedback, absolutely. But what may you be noticing?
There's all sorts of
behaviours.
Yeah, behaviour, subtle signs. People tapping the
language.
table, twiddling with the pen, moving around.
Yeah, that body language, like
building
Amy
up.
said. Yeah, something building up. You can see it, can't you, in the face? And this,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they're transitioning, let's just say training, for instance, online, I can't see anybody. How am I ever going to know that they're okay? How am I ever going to know that they want to ask a question? Well, pop the cameras on then, if that's what your concern is. And we're animals, aren't we, at the end of the day? We read each other continuously. You watch how animals read each other. They fascinate me. I just watch my cats sometimes, and just sometimes even the way they walk past each other. Just that little tiny flick of the tail or the way they move the head can determine how the other cat responds to them, generally when they're just about to get pounced on. But nonetheless, we still read body language. We read from each other continuously, and we can do the same with ourselves. Who's ever videoed themselves and watched themselves back?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've done that quite a few times. What is it that you notice within yourself that maybe you weren't aware before you did that?
I got a sorry, go on.
Go on.
I got a huge shock maybe 20 years ago. I was working with a group of French students in French.
Okay.
And it was being filmed. I hadn't realized. And afterwards, the film was being shown, and I walked back into the room, and I heard this English person, this person speaking French with an outrageous British accent.
Okay.
And I turned to the group and I said, "Well, who's that?" And they all turned to me and went, "It's you, Bob." And I hadn't realised up until that moment in time just how my English accent sounds when I'm speaking French. In fact, when I speak French or English, my accent doesn't change. I speak French. I speak very, very good French. I speak near fluent French.
Wow.
And I coach, I train in French, but my accent is still, I've maintained my British accent. So I got a real surprise.
Yeah, who's that? Oh,
yeah, I said, who's that terrible accent? And they just all turned and looked at me and went, "But it's you, Bob." Oh, wow.
But I love the fact that it hasn't changed anything, because it probably didn't need to, did it?
No, I've kept the accent.
I love it. Brilliant. Glenn, was you just about to say something?
Yeah, my full-time role in the last 10, 12 years or more is a senior lecturer in a business school in UK uni.
Okay.
And yeah, I've had to have myself filmed and also help others to better present themselves,
Yeah.
management, and actually dealing with management and helping them to develop can be the most interesting and challenging areas because they think they know it.
Absolutely. You know, they get themselves into the little routines, they do what they've always done, they've got experience. So, yeah, absolutely. You know, they know an approach that works a lot of the time. So, when I'm delivering, let's just say, coaching workshops, for instance, you know, sometimes they kind of almost don't recognize that there's other types, shall we say, of people, and maybe just communicating in a slightly different way could be more conducive for that individual, and that can be like the most biggest revelation ever to them. So yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
I'm an Insights user. I don't know if
Oh yeah,
you know
I do.
I've been an accredited practitioner about 20 years now, and I use it. I often use it in conjunction with mental toughness. They go very nicely. In fact, you can almost map the two wheels one onto the other, almost.
Yep. I completely agree with you. Well, in my coaching course that uses MTQ, I just do a more basic measure, which is the 4 like personality or communication traits, you know, the driver, the analyst, all the rest of it. And it's quite interesting. The social styles, that's right. Yeah. It's quite interesting how actually it links, because like, for instance, the more amiable individual has more of a natural propensity to be more mentally sensitive, for instance. Not always. But yeah, I completely agree. Yes, I'm very familiar with Insights. So yeah, very interesting. Anything else? Go on.
One of the things that I noted is I have presented on many occasions and sometimes to international audiences, and I know that I speak very quickly. So I consciously have to slow myself down whenever I'm speaking to people whose language or their own mother tongue is not English.
Yeah.
And I think, although I was aware of it, it wasn't until it was sort of recorded that I was just like, oh my gosh, that's yeah.
Yeah.
So now I consciously slow myself down.
But I mean, again, that's great self-awareness, isn't it? Is it not just about recognizing the impact, a little bit like we were saying before, that you're having on somebody else and yourself? Because, you know, if you spoke too quickly, then your individuals that are listening to you aren't going to grasp what it was that you were trying to actually tell them. And then the impact on you is then that they maybe didn't enjoy the session as much as they potentially could. So it's great if we can just pause sometimes, because we don't do it, do we, as human beings? We're so quick to kind of be a bull at a gate all the time, just to pause and actually think, right, hang on a minute, how well did that actually work, not only for me but for them? And what is it maybe I need to do different?
The self-awareness, it goes beyond maybe feelings and emotions. It's also about maybe our physical size.
Yeah.
Maybe I can remember I normally work with kind of senior managers, and with Airbus I did some work with assembly line team leaders.
Okay.
And the language I was using just wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
The examples I was giving, the way I was explaining things, the anecdotes which I usually used, I suddenly realised even the way I was dressed.
Yeah.
I turned up in kind of fairly normal dress, kind of shirt and tie and so forth. They all turned up in jeans and t-shirts.
Yeah.
And I could see them all thinking, "Oh, who's this? We got another arsehole coming from management to talk about it." It's not. I think there is emotions for sure, but there's also other things. Yeah.
Of course,
intellectual capacity sometimes.
Yeah.
I remember Einstein said, if you can't explain your subject to a 6-year-old,
and you don't know
you need
it,
to be able to adjust how you explain things, how you hold yourself. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, there is. I can actually concur with that. I was working with a very large supermarket a couple of years ago, and they have quite a casual dress, shall we say, even though the management are very corporate. So as you're walking into a training room, I just naturally dress business type dress. Yeah. They're all in the jeans, they're all in their overalls, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, because they look at you in a different way then. I completely agree with you. So yeah, I mean, it's a huge subject, self-awareness. We could probably do a full week's course just on self-awareness. So kind of doesn't really lend itself for sort of 5 minutes chat, shall we say. But yeah, I completely agree with you. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so I suppose the $1 million question is then, how can we actually become more self-aware? What is it that we can do? And you can pop that into chat. Or just open up your mics, because I like talking.
I'm going to open up my mic because I currently have a kitty cat sleeping in my lap and holding on to one arm, so so I can't really type. But for me, it most definitely is thinking before I speak. So thinking about, you know, what's the impact, or how is it going to make that other person feel?
Yeah, most definitely. It is about thinking, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like I said just a moment ago, just taking that pause.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Actually,
And
have
I'm
I got
trying
that
to,
right?
I was going to say, I'm trying to teach my 14-year-old daughter that at the moment, because her and her brother are currently, you know, got a little bit of, they're a bit, have cabin fever a little bit. So
Yeah, they're not on their own.
yeah,
Can I just say? Yeah, I'm sitting in front of this computer now from like 8 in the morning till sometimes like 9 at night, and it's like, I don't think I can do it. As every day like that. But yeah, I completely agree. So it can be a tough question. It really can. Also to ask yourself. Bob's saying that ask for feedback, brilliant, and develop the ability to watch yourself while doing, most definitely. Because sometimes we do things and we've no idea. I mean, personality profiles is another great one. Johari's window. I love doing Johari's window with leadership teams, especially if they've never done it before. Whew, goodness me, that can be pretty impactful. So yeah, all of that type of thing it just leads to great self-awareness, because sometimes we just don't see we don't see ourselves sometimes as others see us. And we don't
Just to add to your point, Sam, I think it's not only stopping to think about what's the impact. I like to think about what's the consequences of my actions or my emotions or my thinking, but what's the unintended consequences, which I think is even more powerful.
Yep.
Because when we stop to recognise and really take the chance to pause and think about that, we'll discover so much more. So even if I'm being really empathetic and trying to help people with their work and feeling I'm being kind, they might feel micromanaged. You know, there's all these unintended consequences that can come, and all I'm trying to do is have a positive response. So I think it's really searching beyond just what's the obvious in terms of the impact, and looking for what was unintentional or unintended.
Yeah, and I think that for me is a little bit like I said with Johari's window there sometimes, because if you're more mentally sensitive, you may not speak up on that unintended impact. You might not, you know, I just don't really want to do that again, or whatever it is for that individual that maybe you've impacted. Whereas somebody more mentally tough may speak up, but that may have been interpreted in the wrong way. As you say, it's unintentional. So again, there's divides there as well, but that's a lovely point. It really is. John's saying there about self-reflection as well. Yeah, most definitely. Some great points here. I love it. Exactly what we've just been saying there, Bob. You must have seen the slides beforehand. Ask for feedback. Ask yourself what works well for you as well. But also what doesn't. What has worked in the past. What maybe you've got feedback about in the past. What experience are you kind of bringing to the party as well? What brings out the best in you? I always like to think of it that way as well. How can I be my best version of myself? There's a TED talk by Dan Cable, just come to me then, called your best self, or something along them lines.
Yes.
What a great TED talk that is. Somebody's saying yes. Who's saying yes?
Yeah, Karen.
That's Karen. Sorry, you've not.
Yeah.
There you are. Right, okay.
And they also do some terrific best self reports that you can use with your coaching clients, which are an excellent way to help them identify, well, for themselves to recognize themselves at their best. But it's also a series of stories which are written by 4 of your colleagues, friends, family members, and it's all produced back to you, so you can read about your best self. Brilliant. So it's a lovely way to identify yourself and be more self-aware.
It is, and sometimes that be honest piece there that's at the bottom, that can be the biggest, toughest part of all. But I love that story about writing that. That's a great idea. It really is. Ugly mirror, I like to call it, because sometimes we do need a bit of a chat with ourselves, actually. That self-reflection time. I quite like, maybe I'm a bit daft, I don't know, but I quite like pushing myself out of my comfort zone. If I don't know something, I really strive to kind of learn something new. I conducted just before lockdown a train the trainer, because I do a lot of online facilitation training. And I went into the office, but I also had some of the team down in London, so some of it was virtual. I didn't know the platform, it was Zoom. No idea. I'd spent about 20 minutes on YouTube the night before on Zoom. I thought, how hard can it be? And I was honest and upfront with them. But as I was going through Zoom, training them on how to use it, but also the principles of online learning, I was learning it myself. And I enjoy stretching myself in that way. Some people don't enjoy it so much. But sometimes I do just sort of stop and think to myself, actually, should I have prepped a bit more? But they seem to quite like the honesty, to be honest. So that worked for me. And I got very good feedback. Why do I do what I do? That metacognition, start to think about actually my thinking patterns here, what's going on for me. Of course, those psychometric tests, if you wish for one to be sent out to you after the end of this particular course as well, I can arrange that with Sonia and she will send that out for you. And of course, it's a great way to self-reflect and to be more self-aware as well after completing one of those tests. Who has completed the tests in the past? Now, I know a few of you will have done. Just give me a green tick. You're going to need your participants panel again, Bob.
This is for MTQ Plus or for psychometrics?
For the for the MTQ Plus.
Oh.
Yeah, so a few of you. Oh, right, okay, so Amy hasn't. Perfect. Yeah, so the others have, yeah, which would have surprised me. Again, if you want to complete one now, I can most definitely, and I'll take down who wants to complete one. I can most definitely get one of those sent out to you that can be completed now, and certainly for Amy that has never completed it before in the past. And I'm going to talk through those in just a second as well, so brilliant, thank you. Okay, so let's have a look at the 4 C's then. What are we, or what are they, I should say? And Glenn, again, we have an expert on the line. So it's going to be kind of interesting. Please feel free to pop your thoughts in. But I've got a poll first of all, because I like getting you doing stuff. I did warn you that, didn't I, at the very beginning? So I'm going to bring another poll here. What are the 4 C's? You may never have heard of it, but you may have heard of it. So what are they? We've got choice, commitment, care and cake. I like the sound of that one, if I'm honest. Control, commitment, challenge and confidence. Or no control, lack of commitment, no challenge and no confidence. Absolutely. I think we've got everybody answered there, which is fab. Brilliant. Thank you for that. So let me just end that polling and share those results with you. Of course it is. Yay. Thank God you got that right, Glenn.
You're in trouble otherwise.
You would. You'd have Doug chasing you.
Yeah.
I'll take that off the screen. It was just a little bit of fun, really, more for that one. But of course, you know, people like maybe Amy that aren't familiar with them, it's quite a nice kind of little heads up. So these are the 4 C's, and we'll talk through them just one by one. And like I've said, please, for those of you that are on the line, I'll just do this very lightly. This is a big subject. And if I'm honest, the more I learn about it, the more I see the correlations with everything in life. It's incredible. So that question, what do you currently know? I'll kind of park that. And as we move through them, we'll talk through.
I have to go and get a wasp out of the house.
Oh, gracious, Bob, be careful. Don't get stung.
Be back in 2 minutes. I need to muster up all my mental toughness and get a chair and whatever. I'll be back.
Get a glass and a card. I don't know. Okay, so these are the 4 C's. The way they're broken down, and please, I don't want to teach anybody to suck eggs. Who has come across these? Oh, actually, just give me a red cross if you've never seen them in your life. Possibly Amy. You've never come across these before, okay? Anybody else? I think everybody else is familiar with them. So, Amy, you have got a wealth of experience on this call. Wow, gracious me. All these practitioners that we have on this call today. Fantastic. So just briefly then for Amy. The 4 C's are broken down into 2 sub-factors each. And the report explains these in a lot more detail. So when you have the opportunity, which you will do, to complete this, you will see this in a lot more detail. Control, commitment, challenge, and confidence. And each are broken up into 2 areas. So control, we have things like life control, emotional control. Commitment, achievement orientated or goal orientated. Challenge is broken into risk orientation, learning orientation. I'm going to go to them in just a second. And confidence is broken down into confidence in abilities and interpersonal confidence. So let's have a look at these in a little bit more detail. I think we've just lost somebody else as well. John's had to go. Okay, so control. This is broken up into two areas. I'm not going to go into this in loads and loads of detail because it is a very, very big subject, this, if I'm being perfectly honest. And what I'd like you to do is when you get your report, I'm more than happy, as I have done with some of the individuals that have come onto these sort of little mini webinars with me, discuss your report with me. I'm more than happy to do that with you separately as well. But control, life control here. Really believe that they can kind of do it. They are in control of what goes on around them, and they can, or they certainly they feel that they can influence what is going on around them. Now, at the moment, there's quite a lot that we're not in control of. So more mentally sensitive individuals, for instance, may feel out of control here. And I would be expecting there to see quite low results in relation to the scoring, which we'll have a look in just a second. But they tend to be quite good at planning and organising, etc. And a little bit like we said before, they feel actually that they can make a difference to not only themselves, but to others as well. Emotional control, well, they can manage or have an awareness of managing their own emotional responses. Again, they can influence others. Can be quite difficult to provoke and annoy because, again, they're quite grounded and sort of set themselves, they know where they are. But they can also mask anxiety. Now, at the moment, yeah, a mentally tough individual, brilliant. But are they masking that anxiety and they're not being honest with themselves in regards to what it is that's maybe going on for them? Anything to add on control? Because this is just a light touch from anybody. No?
No.
So let's move into the next one. And this is commitment, of course. And again, this is broken up into two areas, that achievement orientated and that goal orientated. So the more sort of achievement orientation, I'll kind of do whatever it takes. I've set myself something that I need to do and I need to achieve that. So I would be expecting there to see probably quite a high score from an individual that is quite focused on what it is that they have kind of set themselves. They'll work incredibly hard. They'll keep the promises. They'll tend to be more conscientious and they'll focus and concentrate, but they can self-sacrifice to get there, which of course is the downside to this. Achievement orientation, if you like. So that more goal orientated, they love working to goals. They may set themselves tiny little goals because they just like to achieve them, which is fantastic, and they enjoy doing that. Targets actually motivate somebody that would be quite mentally tough within this particular area, and it can be a source of drive for them as well. They can set themselves, so things like runners and athletes, etc., set themselves personal best on things like a park run, etc., and they'll really want to try and strive to kind of achieve them as well. Visualization starts to come into play a little bit as well. They tend to kind of focus on the future rather than just the here and now, and they quite like to be tested. Is there anything in regards to commitment that anybody would like to add? No? Okay. So let's move into a challenge then. The two sub-factors here are, of course, risk orientation and learning orientation. Now, when we spoke earlier about the risk orientation, this is potentially an individual now that thinks, well, maybe the lockdown, you know, I'll be fine, I'll put my mask on, I'll be fine, and I can go out as much as I like type of thing, maybe type of attitude. So they're quite happy to take risks. Now, that isn't just with themselves, that could be with money, for instance. So that risk orientation actually can be quite strong and sometimes detrimental in some people if they're not learning from the mistakes that can be made within that. They do like to stretch themselves though, of course. They love to try new things, not afraid of change. So at the moment, this type of person here that actually quite likes challenge, shall we say, they almost see the change as a challenge. How is it that I can diversify? And they almost thrive in it as well. Sometimes they actually even seek out new challenges or change things just for almost sometimes for the sake of changing them, because they quite like that kind of buzz of having to do something new. Now, the learning orientation here is, yes, they may have taken calculated risk, but guess what? Sometimes things go wrong. So what is it that they learn from that? Even a setback could be an opportunity to actually, well, that part works, but that didn't. And that can be a real asset, shall we say, to somebody's self-awareness as well, in regards to what is it that went well and what maybe didn't. Tend to be a little bit more optimistic as well, because of course, well, it's not going to be, oh God, that didn't work, never going to do that again. They'll kind of look to solutionize, shall we say. And they can tend to try anything once, but that can also be a downside if they have quite a high risk orientation as well. Is there anything to add in regards to challenge?
Yeah, I think for me, the challenge aspect is probably one of the key differentiators for me between mental toughness and resilience. Yeah, I think resilience is also about being able to bounce back, but I think mental toughness is also, it's people are mentally tough. They seek out challenge. I think there are a lot of resilient people who can, who are resilient when under pressure, but they won't seek out being under pressure. When it happens to them, they cope. But I think one of the differences in mental toughness is people actually seek. I think it's one of the aspects is always high with the entrepreneurs. Yeah. People are willing to take the risk, try things out. Yeah, most definitely. And that's, I completely agree, where they're seeking out, when sometimes people would be quite happy in that little comfort zone. I've sussed this now, I'm all right here. They'd be like, no, let's take it now to the next level. Let's try something different. So yeah, brilliant. That's a lovely point. Thank you for that, Bob. So let's move into the next one, which is confidence. And this is again broken into two subfactors, which is confidence in the abilities and interpersonal confidence as well. So that confidence in abilities, they believe that they can do it. They'll believe that they can learn maybe something that they don't know previously. They'll have confidence to actually step out and try something new, because they recognize, actually, I'm relatively skilled in this, know a little bit, I'm going to give it a little bit of a go. And of course, they'll use their abilities to their advantage as well. This interpersonal confidence here, it's a little bit on how they kind of influence, I think, other individuals here, and how they come across in maybe more group discussions, etc. But they'll check to understand as well, and they'll be looking at maybe potentially how they can influence the situation. But they'll ask lots of questions to make sure that they fully understand from not only their perspective, but from the other person's perspective too. Yeah, anything else to add with interpersonal confidence with this one? Yeah, I think it's about maybe facing up to challenging people. Yeah. Not. I mean, my benchmark in when I work in mental toughness training is 12 Angry Men. I don't know if you know the field 12 Angry Men. Interpersonal confidence, standing up when people they're pointing at you, and they have knives and they're shouting at you, but you have the interpersonal confidence to say, okay, I can handle that. So you're angry, you're annoyed, so let's talk about this. So I think it's that aspect. Calling it out, isn't it? It's almost naming that emotion. If I was to use transaction analysis, it's kind of I'm okay, you're okay. Yep. Absolutely, yeah, it is, yeah, and that's a lovely way. Transactional analysis, that's another area that I've been doing quite a lot of development in myself as well. So yeah, that I'm okay and you're okay. Funny, I was talking to my son about that last week. That's another story. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for adding that as well. The way that they are marked, shall we say, is on a STEN report. So for people like Amy that have never seen this before, when you receive your report, you'll receive 3 reports. You'll receive a development report, which is kind of designed and aimed for you specifically. You'll have a coaching report, which of course you can use with a coach to aid and support your development. And you have, I forgot what the third one is, a development coaching report. Oh, what's the third one? It's a manager's report? No, it's for your manager. I can't remember the name of it. Is it not for your manager? How to work with this person? It is. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. One sec, I'll grab it.
I've got mine here. Assessor report. That's the one.
Assessor report. That's right.
I couldn't remember the name of it. Yeah, that can actually be used for recruitment as well. I've known some people use that in the recruitment process, etc. Penny's had to go as well. Such a shame. So yeah, when you receive your report, Amy, you'll get a score for overall mental toughness, which is of your overall score, and then each of the sub-factors will be broken down. So the control will have an overall score, and then the two sub-factors that sit under each of the main elements also have separate scores, and that report will be bespoke to you and your scoring. So obviously how you answer that report will determine what your main overall scoring will be, and it breaks it down into each of the areas. I just think it's a lovely report to read, and as you're reading through it, you're thinking, oh my God, this is so true. So I'd be really interested in speaking to you afterwards, Amy, just to sort of get your thoughts on what it is that you feel. So the more mentally sensitive individuals would score 1, 2 and 3s, for instance, and the more mentally tough individuals would be scoring, I think it's 7, 8s and 9s and 10s, or is it 8s, 9s and 10s? I always forget which is.
8, 9, 10.
Is it 8s, 9 and 10s? And it's 16% of the population would be at either end of the spectrum.
I haven't used the. I mean, I'm actually in the process of translating the MTQ Plus into French.
Okay.
So at the moment, I work with the old version.
Okay.
But I know it used to be low, medium, and high.
Yes.
And I know I had a long chat with Doug about having a kind of very low, low, medium, high, very high, and having a kind of a wider spread. I mean, although it's a normal curve, and there's a lot in the middle.
Yeah.
I think there could be some worth in having maybe a
wider
spread.
Yeah, I would agree, actually. I think that would maybe target specific areas even better than it does now, because I think it works beautifully. Because, I mean, you can look at this report here and look at the 3s straight away, that emotional control. How could that actually be knocking into that learning orientation, for instance? Maybe you're not learning from your mistakes, and that's creating anxiety.
Because I think in the reports as they stand, I mean, between a 4, 5, 6 and 7, they're all going to be medium.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're all on kind of the flat part of the curve.
Yeah.
But even so, someone who's a 7 is going to behave probably quite differently to someone who is a 4. So I think there could be some room for a bit more differentiation.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, these reports, you know, they're changing all of the time. They're adding to things, you know, the research that's going into it, especially now there's some research going on at the moment that I think is going to be fascinating when that's going to be released, hopefully early next year. So, yeah, I just think the way that they use them is incredible, and for different sectors as well. I just think it works lovely. So, yeah, I'd be really interested in a conversation with you afterwards, Amy, once you receive yours. Perfect. So thank you for all of your additions there as well. So this was what was kind of in my mind when I wrote this. How is it then that the mentally tough and the mentally sensitive can actually complement each other? I've put a whiteboard here, but just feel free to open up your mics if you want, and just kind of share what your thoughts are, because I had some thoughts in my head when I wrote this, but I'd be really interested to sort of hear yours.
I think it opens up diversity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so if you've got two sides of the spectrum, you've got a better perspective, I think, on things.
Yep, most definitely, because I think sometimes, especially the mentally tough, can be quite dismissive as well. So, yeah, I completely agree. That's a great one. Thank you, John.
I think for the moment, I'm not convinced that... I wonder if there's actually two things. I mean, I think you can have low mental sensitivity and high mental sensitivity, and low mental toughness and high mental toughness. And I'm wondering, can you have people who have low mental sensitivity and low mental toughness? I'm wondering if it's not a kind of a 4-box thing. Because I'm not sure that being low mental toughness. I know I've had the discussion with Doug. I'm still not convinced that simply having low mental toughness means I am mentally sensitive. For me, it means I have low mental toughness.
Okay, I see where you're going with that, actually.
But,
rather than sort of being more mentally sensitive. So maybe in a certain area, maybe you're just a little bit more, Just maybe
I mean,
just a little bit more
I
sensitive
go
in that
back to
area.
I mean, I use the 12 Angry Men a lot in what I do. And I think if you know the film, it's a great film. I mean, the character of Henry Fonda, he's clearly mentally tough.
Yeah.
He doesn't give up, he doesn't let go. But he's also amazingly empathetic. He doesn't
Yeah.
criticize people. He's really, he's polite, understanding. He
Mm.
listens. And he seems to have both. So
Yeah.
on one, is it simply two ends of a spectrum? Or is it two different things?
Okay, so let's come back to, because that's another good example. Let's come back to the New Zealand Prime Minister.
Mhm.
It's exactly what we said before.
Yeah.
It's no different. Whereas I would describe her, without seeing a report or knowing the lady, from what it is that I see, I would describe her as being incredibly mentally tough.
Yeah, I think so
However,
as well.
she's got a massive empathetic side.
Yeah.
Which is one of her huge strengths. And I think for me, is it not just thinking about how we can draw on each other's strengths? And why does it have to be mentally sensitive, mentally tough? Is it not about working together and recognizing actually each other's strengths within that? And yes, I agree about the sliding scale, you know, at one end or the other. But I suppose that's how you also...
Completely on that, Sam. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go on.
Really with you on that. I've recently been teaching a mixed group of 2/3 Chinese, 1/3 UK master students.
Mm-hmm.
If I had the time, and time is always a pressure in a learning environment,
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce them into mental toughness and sensitivity as well.
Okay.
But I think I'd have to persuade my dean to double the time and the course for that one.
Absolutely, yeah. It is. I mean, it's a huge subject, in fairness, you know, to sort of do it even in just 90 minutes. And we're over 90 minutes now. Because it's such a big subject that just lends itself to so much conversation and, of course, so much thought and opinion and debate. And is that not what it's about? That then we're starting to recognise and understand each other even more. And I just love what it kind of creates from that perspective. But yeah, I think that's a good point, Bob. So thank you. And thank you, Glenn, as well for that addition as well. We've got somebody...
I don't know if it necessarily is saying that just because you have empathy that you're mentally sensitive. Because if we look at the scale, you can be somebody who's sitting within the balanced group, so is sitting somewhere between a 4 and a 7, who displays a considerable amount of empathy, yet they're still a mentally tough person overall. So if we're looking at mental toughness, we're looking at the overall reading of a person, and then there's the elements to it.
Yeah.
And so Jacinta Ardern, for instance, you know, she exhibits a lot of life control. She exhibits at times really high levels of strength in her ability to control her emotions, yet she can be highly empathetic as well. So I wouldn't say she's mentally sensitive, because to my mind, someone who's mentally sensitive would have a degree of control of their emotions, whereas I think she's appropriate with the level of emotionality that she's displayed, the timing of when she's displayed it, you know, the context and all those types of things. So I would be putting her more in the balance of she's attuned to her emotions and not, I wouldn't describe her as mentally sensitive if we look at what the definitions are from the model.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's actually a very, very nice way of describing it, because even though you're mentally tough doesn't mean to say that you can't be empathetic, because of course you can be. And it's a massive strength, I think. Certainly, again, we're back down to that self-awareness, aren't we? We're back down to that.
Is it not the Americans who say, be hard on the problem, soft on the people?
Yes, it is.
And
That's
maybe,
I've not heard that for a long
both.
time.
You know, I'm determined to get this problem done.
Yeah.
But I'm respectful to the person involved.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a great scene in 12 Angry Men at the end of the film where Henry Fonda gives the coat to the person who's been his kind of alter ego throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
And really kind of this person who's been doing this with.
Yeah.
So the whole film where he says, I have nothing against you. I just didn't agree with you.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. Is that not showing great mental toughness as well, though?
For sure.
Absolutely. Another lovely point. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Amy,
sorry to interrupt. It's 12 here in the morning, so I'm going to have to exit.
We're very nearly finished as well. We are very nearly finished, but thank you, Karen. I can send you the recording anyway. I'll send you the
I'd love that.
To finish
off. I appreciate it. All the best to you all. Nice to meet you all.
Lovely, Karen. You go and get some sleep. Good night.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Will do. Bye.
Stay safe.
Yeah, Amy's also put there, they can each learn from others' strengths. Of course we can. And that kind of, I think, sort of almost sums it up really well as well. Because, yeah, we can. And is that not the whole point of it? So I just kind of put a few bits and pieces up on here. Consider things from their perspective. We've just been saying that. That patience as well. Sometimes it requires a little bit of patience to just kind of sit and listen, because we don't do that a lot of the time. Talk to each other instead of jumping to conclusions. Don't make assumptions. Listen. I was in a coaching session this morning. I was actually doing a supervision session for one of my coachees, and she was saying actually some of the work I've been doing with her, how better, I can't think of my words then, she is listening. And a lot of people just kind of dismiss listening as it being, well, we just listen. Well, no, we don't. Sometimes we actually just need to take that pause and listen. Ask questions to understand rather than, and it's that Covey quote, and I'll bring that in just a second as well. Some people are just waiting to reply. How well are we actually understanding them then? What are their strengths? What can we play to? But what are their weaknesses? And I'm not a lover of that word. But what maybe are their challenges as well? And how can I get the best, not only of myself, but out of that individual as well? And this is that Covey quote that I mentioned. Most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Yeah. Is that not something that we could actually do maybe a little bit better to support maybe some that is maybe a little bit more mentally sensitive right now, and also to understand the perspective of that more mentally tough individual too? You guys will be very familiar, other than probably Amy, about the mental toughness development that, of course, sits around all of the reports. It's evidence-based psychometrics, and, of course, it can pinpoint those development areas specific to you as well. It can obviously improve that positive thinking, that mindset. And it's funny, actually, I was watching that SAS celebrity thing last night, and it was John Fashanu who was talking about mindset. And he just broke that word into two. And he said it was how I set my mind. And I'd never even thought about it like that. And I thought, you know, he's absolutely right. Yeah. All he'd done is just turn the word around. I thought, quite like that. I'm going to nick it. Anxiety control, for instance, all of that stuff that we've been kind of talking about as well. If we increase and develop our mental toughness, not that it's bad to be mentally sensitive, but if things are getting on top of us, like our emotional responses, for instance, how is it that we can improve that? So just the last couple of bits and pieces here. And I love this quote: be the reason that someone smiles today. Is that not something that we could all do a little bit more of right now? I've been working with some fantastic teams, and that's our adage, shall we say, for the day. So you're going to need your phones. Let's just do this last one task, and I'll bring mine in here. You're going to need your phones. You'll never get a trainer saying you're going to need your phone in a training session. And what I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to go onto this website here, polev.com. And I will flick across now. I'll just share my screen slightly differently. There it should be.
That's a capital P, yeah?
I think it is, but you'll probably find it anyway, in fairness. polev.com. It should be the top option that comes up, and I'll activate that particular session. And it will then ask you for it'll say polev.com. in that join the presentation, and then it's 1, 2, 3 people dev, and then it's 0, 0, 0 as in the numbers, and then press join. And it should
our cookies, yes, okay. Join a presentation. So it says join a presentation.
So Glenn's saying you've not got a phone. Oh no, Glenn, shout out the names then that you want me to add, and I'll pop them on for you. What do you reckon? What are we going to be more considerate about after today's session then? You can shout out, Glenn, or you can pop it into chat, and I'll pop it into here.
I think it's the need to listen for me.
So it's listen for you. Okay, I'm going to put that in. Keep them going, Glenn, because I can send as many as you like, and you'll start to see this create this little word cloud here.
To give others more time.
So time. You need just one word. What else?
Be aware.
Aware of what?
Of how sometimes my determination and focus can be seen by others as being maybe too determined and too focused.
Okay. Amy, I'm loving the cat. Glenn, anything else?
Consideration.
Say again?
Consideration.
Oh, consideration. That's a nice one. Fab. Anything else?
Others.
Others. Absolutely. Anything else?
Self.
Cooperation.
What was that?
Cooperation. Cooperation.
I've probably spelt that wrong. I've not got my glasses on.
Self.
So, oh, that's another good one. Brilliant. Yeah. We kind of forget ourselves sometimes, don't we? Sometimes I think the more mentally sensitive care a little bit more about everybody else and kind of
maybe dialogue.
Ooh, that's another good
Something
one.
I think is missing a lot in the world today. We seem to be in a lot of diatribe today. A lot of people are criticising, belittling people. Seem to be missing real dialogue between people.
Yeah, and I've probably just spelt that wrong, but no. Well, I agree. I don't think people did jump in too quickly. I'll give you one example of this, and Amy's had to go as well. There was a light aircraft flying over near Liverpool. We when we go flying, we fly from Liverpool Airport, and there was a light aircraft going in to land. Everybody's jumping all over it on Facebook. Oh, why is that light aircraft out? I thought we had lockdown. We shouldn't be out. They were bringing supplies in, specific supplies. People are too quick, aren't they, to jump?
Look for the positive intention.
Oh.
Look for the positive intention.
So I'm going to put positive, and then we'll shut this down, and then intention, because otherwise it splits it up.
I try to live with the principle that most people do things for a good reason.
Yeah.
Most.
Yes.
Most. And often it doesn't always look like a good reason. So when people do something which I see as really strange, I try to understand why have they done this.
Yeah.
They must have a reason.
Absolutely.
They don't put spanners in the works for putting spanners in the works. Most people.
Most people. I would agree. Yeah.
No names.
And again, I mean, yeah. And again, is that not coming back down to almost great self-awareness there? Because you're able to kind of think and consider that from maybe their perspective. So yeah, I completely agree with you. So let me just flick back then to, where's my slides gone? That one. To the main slides. I'll pop that on LinkedIn later on, our little word cloud. So thank you for completing that. But again, we've got some lovely stuff on there. So there, just to summarize, ask questions, talk, just think about things from a little bit more of a balanced perspective, etc., their perspective. And I quite like that, the water and the fire,
yes.
kind of strengths within both, and how they can complement each other as well, and that listen. So let's just come to the close. Does anybody have any questions?
It's okay for me.
Okay for you guys? No problem.
That was great. Thanks very much.
You enjoy that?
Thanks a lot, Sam.
That was the agenda. I'm not going to run through all of that. That was me. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. Thank you. It was just in my head last week, and I thought, I need to make a session, so I do. And that's what I just do.
Thank you very much, Sam.
That's all right.
Thanks very much.
That's no problem. If anybody would like me to send out